He believed his plan was perfect, a routine appendix surgery to disguise the sterilization that would make it impossible for me to ever have children. But he never imagined that I would uncover his secret and use his mistress as my weapon. My name is Amara, and I'm 34. The first thing I felt upon waking wasn't pain but confusion. A constant rhythmic beeping filled the silence of the room. An antiseptic smell stung my nose, and my throat felt like I'd swallowed sand. I tried to move, but a sharp, stabbing pain in my lower abdomen stole my breath. It wasn't the pain I expected, it was deeper, more invasive. The morning everything changed. I had kissed my husband Darian goodbye, thinking he would be home for dinner. A simple appendectomy, nothing more than a few small scars, and a story about bland hospital food. But as I lay in that bed, under the fluorescent light that made everything seem pale and sickly, I knew something was terribly wrong. A young nurse with kind eyes and a name tag that read Nia entered the room. She moved with quiet efficiency, adjusting the IV drip, checking my vitals. But there was something in her gaze, a mixture of pity and nervousness that unsettled me. Every time her eyes met mine, she quickly glanced toward the door, as if she was afraid someone would discover her. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Jones?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Thirsty," I managed to croak, "and it hurts down here." "Is the pain this bad normally?" Nia froze. Her hand hung suspended over the monitor. She looked toward the door again, this time biting her lip. Then she leaned in toward me, creating a small bubble of confidentiality in the sterile space. "Ma'am, didn't they tell you about the second procedure?" she whispered, and her words fell on me like a bucket of ice water. I shook my head, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs, an anxious drum that was reflected in the monitor's accelerating beeping. "What second procedure?" I said. "What are you talking about, nurse?" She swallowed hard. "Your husband. He signed the authorization. While you were in surgery, he authorized a tubal ligation." The world stopped. The words floated in the air. Absurd. Impossible. Tubal ligation. Sterilization. Darian. My Darian. The man who had just smiled at me across a candlelit table last week, the light dancing in his eyes as I talked about baby names. I closed my eyes and the memory hit me with unbearable cruelty. We were celebrating our 5th anniversary. I wore a silky blue dress he loved. I spoke with an enthusiasm that now felt shamefully naive about turning the study in our house into a nursery after our trip to Jamaica. He took my hand across the table. "Of course, my love," he'd said. His voice was velvet. "All in good time. I just want everything to be perfect for when our child arrives." I believed him. How could I not? I, who had grown up in a home where every achievement was minimized and every mistake magnified, had found a refuge in Darian. He was my calm, my stability, the man who had taught me I was enough, or so I believed. The sharp pain that had brought me here now felt distant, insignificant compared to the devastation that was tearing through my chest. I remembered his panicked face when I doubled over in pain during a site visit, how he had picked me up in his arms, how he had yelled at his assistant to cancel everything. I remembered his hand squeezing mine in the car, whispering, "I'll take care of everything, my life. You don't worry about a thing." And he had taken care of it. He sure had. While I slept, trusting and vulnerable, the man to whom I had given my life had made a decision about my body, my future, and my dreams. Without my consent, he had wielded an invisible scalpel and removed my ability to be a mother, and he had done it with a smile. The monitor's beeping was a deafening scream. Nia placed a hand on my shoulder, her eyes full of a sorrow that could not console me. In that moment, in that cold, anonymous room, I understood that the surgery had not just removed my appendix. It had ripped out the future I had spent 5 years building, and the architect of my ruin was the very man who had sworn to protect me. The hours that followed were a torture of powerlessness. I called Darian over and over, but my phone went straight to voicemail. The anxiety swelled inside me like a black tide. When Dr. Sterling, the surgeon, finally appeared, his presence filled the room with an icy arrogance that made my skin crawl. He was a man with silver hair and an impeccable reputation, the type of doctor the New York elite went to. "Mrs. Jones," he said, not meeting my eyes as he reviewed some papers on his tablet. "The surgery was a success. The appendicitis was contained. You'll be able to go home in a couple of days." "The second procedure," my voice was a shaky thread. The nurse said. Dr. Sterling finally looked up. His expression was one of calculated boredom. "Ah, yes, a small preventative measure. Your husband informed us of a history of gynecological issues and considered it prudent to resolve it all at once. It was a decision made in your best interest to spare you a future surgery and more stress." His tone was so condescending, so casual, as if he were talking about the weather. He was telling me I had been mutilated for convenience and expected me to thank him. Rage, pure and hot, began to dissolve the shock. "You didn't have my consent. We had your husband's, who is legally your proxy in a medical emergency. Everything is in order, ma'am. Now, if you'll excuse me." He left before I could say anything else, leaving me trembling with fury. Darian arrived that afternoon, walking in with a radiant smile and a huge bouquet of white tulips, my favorites. The gesture that would have once melted me now felt like a macabre mockery. "My life, how are you feeling? You had me so worried," he said, leaning in to kiss me. I turned my face away. "Why?" I asked, my voice flat, emotionless. His smile faltered for a second. "Why?" "What, my love?" "Why did you do it, Darian?" He sighed, setting the flowers on the nightstand and sitting beside me. He took my hand, but I pulled it away as if his touch burned me. It was then that his face took on an expression of grave concern, a mask of empathy I could now see with terrifying clarity. "Amara, my love, the anesthesia is still making you confused. You're sensitive. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than ever. You sterilized me, Darian, without my permission." The performance began. His voice became soft and reasonable, the voice he used to calm me when I was stressed about work. It was the voice of manipulation. "Baby, I did it for us. Don't you remember all the times you panicked about having kids? The time you saw Mark's wife with her baby and you turned pale? You told me you couldn't, that the idea of being pregnant terrified you." He was an extraordinary liar. He was weaving an alternate reality, one where I was an unstable woman and he was my savior. Every word was a dagger that sank deeper into the wound of his betrayal. "That never happened, Darian. Never. We wanted to start trying for a baby." "You were under a lot of stress," he insisted, his tone now paternalistic. "You were confused. I just made the difficult decision you weren't brave enough to make. I freed you from that pressure, my love." I was speechless. He was calling me crazy. He was invalidating my desires, my dreams, my very mind. "Get out of here," I whispered, my voice trembling with an anger that threatened to consume me. "Amara, don't be so dramatic. Let's talk about this like adults when you feel better." "Get out!" I screamed, the sound tearing through the quiet air of the room. He stood up, offended. He adjusted the knot of his tie, always concerned with appearances. "I'll come back when you're more rational." When the door closed, I fell apart. The first call was to Sasha, my best friend, my anchor. "Sasha!" I sobbed into the phone. "Amara, what's wrong? How did everything go?" He had them sterilize me." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a heavy silence filled with disbelief and rage. "That son of a bitch," Sasha finally said. Her voice was pure venom. "Listen to me, Amara. You are not crazy. 3 weeks ago, you showed me fertility clinic brochures. We have a conversation on WhatsApp where we talked about names. You are not crazy. He's a monster, and we're going to make him pay." Her words were the first brick in the reconstruction of my shattered world. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't alone. Coming home was like walking into a crime scene. Our penthouse in Santa Fe, which had been my sanctuary, a testament to the success we had built together, now felt like a gilded cage designed by my captor. Every object, every photo on the wall screamed the lie I had lived. Darian had insisted I take things easy. He had made me a cup of tea and tucked me into the sofa, acting the part of the devoted husband. The nausea I felt had nothing to do with the surgery. Following Sasha's advice, I swallowed my rage and started acting. I apologized to Darian that same night. "You were right," I said, avoiding his gaze. "I was hormonal and sore. I overreacted. I'm sorry." The smile of relief and self-satisfaction that appeared on his face was almost unbearable. "I know, my life. I knew you'd understand. You always do." That night, as he slept peacefully beside me, his breathing deep and quiet, I lay stiff, my eyes open in the darkness. The physical pain of the surgery was a constant reminder, but it was the pain of the soul that kept me awake. I quietly got up and locked myself in the guest bathroom. I turned the shower on full blast, not to bathe, but to drown out the sound of my own breakdown. The hot water fell on me, but I felt a cold that seeped into my bones. And then I cried. It wasn't a cry of rage, not yet. It was the deep, gut-wrenching cry for a future that had been stolen from me. I cried for the children who would now only exist in my imagination, for the Sunday mornings we would never have, for the laughter of a child that would never echo through the halls of that house. I cried for the naive woman who had believed in a fairy tale, only to discover that the prince was the dragon. It was a visceral grief, an emptiness that felt physical, as if a part of my soul had been removed along with the ability to conceive. And in the silence that followed the tears as the steam fogged the mirror, something changed. The pain didn't disappear, but it transformed. It crystallized into a cold, lucid determination. The sadness gave way to a glacial anger. He had not only betrayed me, he had underestimated me. He had assumed that I would break, that I would accept his version of reality, that I would settle for the life he had designed for me. He was wrong. The investigation began the next day. While he was in a meeting, I went to his office, a sanctuary I rarely entered. His laptop, a state-of-the-art MacBook Pro, asked for a password. I tried anniversaries, birthdays, nothing. Then I remembered something. In a casual conversation, Carmen, the wife of one of his business partners, had mentioned that their dog was named Princess and her birthday was April 27th. I remembered Darian laughing and saying something about Carmen and her craziness. It was a hunch. I typed Carmel Princess 2743. The screen unlocked. My heart pounded. I started searching. I found a folder protected with another password, but I used the same one and it worked. Inside were two subfolders. The first, Special Consult, contained a single file, a copy of a $25,000 transfer to a company called Sterling Medical Services, LLC, dated 2 days before my surgery. Proof of bribery. The second folder, Project G, was what chilled me to the bone. It was filled with photos. Darian and a stunning woman with blonde hair and a feline smile on the beach, on yachts, at intimate dinners. I recognized Gina, a young fashion designer I had met at a couple of events. The Mistress. But it wasn't just that. There were documents, contracts, bank statements. Something much bigger and darker was hidden there, and I was going to uncover it. I spent the next several hours submerged in the digital abyss of my husband's secret life. With every click, the image of the man I thought I knew crumbled, replaced by that of a calculating predator. I sent the entire contents of the Project G folder to Sasha with a simple message. I need you to see this right now. While I waited for her call, I began to examine the documents myself. They weren't just business papers. They were the skeleton of a fraud. And it was my eye as an architect, my profession, that gave me the advantage. I'm used to reading blueprints, understanding structures, seeing how the parts fit together to form a whole. What I saw here was a deliberately opaque structure designed to deceive. There was an investment contract between Darian and Gina, a certificate of incorporation for a company called Horizons Development LLC, and bank statements showing a massive transfer, $1,200,000, from Gina's personal account to the new company's account. It was my training that made me notice the details. The business address for Horizons Development was a P.O. box. The sole legal agent with total and unlimited control over the account was Darian Jones. The structure was designed not to partner, but to dispossess. My phone rang. It was Sasha, and her voice was a mixture of fury and a strange professional excitement. "Amara, are you sitting down? Because this is a bomb." "I know. It's a fraud, right?" "A fraud is a work of art in white-collar crime," she exclaimed. "I just did a quick search. The LLC was incorporated 2 months ago. It has no assets, no history, nothing but that bank account. Darian convinced that poor woman to sell a property she inherited from her parents in the Hamptons to invest in a supposed luxury real estate project in Miami." "The project he's been talking about so much," I said, the pieces clicking into place in my mind. "Exactly, but the money was never going to any project. It was going to finance his big move to become independent. And once the money was secured in his other companies, the LLC would be declared bankrupt, and Gina would lose everything. He was erasing me from his reproductive future and her from his financial future," I said, my voice now firm, with no trace of tears. "At the same time." I was silent, processing the magnitude of his cruelty. He wasn't just an adulterer and a traitor, he was a sociopath. "But he didn't count on one thing," Sasha continued, her voice now sharp as a knife. "He didn't count on his wife, the one he thought was a simple decorator, being smart enough to decipher his master plan." A bold and terrible thought began to form in my mind, an idea so wicked that it made me smile for the first time in days. "Sasha, what would happen if Darian needed that money to close a big deal? A very public one?" There was a pause. I could feel Sasha smiling on the other end of the line. "Well, if that money disappeared at the crucial moment, or if the rightful owner of the money found out the truth and decided to freeze the account, it would be a catastrophe for him, a public humiliation and total financial ruin. He used her money to try to secure the future he stole from me," I said, my voice now steady. "We'll use that same money to demolish his world." "My God, Amara," Sasha said with genuine admiration. "He's given us the perfect weapon, and his mistress will be the one to pull the trigger." The plan had been born. It was no longer just about justice for my violated body. It was about total retribution. I was going to dismantle his life piece by piece, using the very bricks with which he planned to build his empire of lies. Contacting Gina was the riskiest move of my life. It was contacting the other woman, my rival, the personification of Darian's betrayal. Every fiber of my being screamed not to do it, but my new, cold logic understood that she wasn't my real enemy. She was another victim, even if she didn't know it yet. She was collateral damage, and now my only possible ally. I found her through her Instagram profile, where she showcased a life of luxury and success as a fashion designer. I sent her a direct message, concise and professional. "Gina, this is Amara, Darian Jones's wife. I need to talk to you about an investment. It's urgent and in your best interest. Don't tell him anything." To my surprise, she responded in less than an hour. "I'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. at the Maison Case in Soho. Come alone." I arrived 15 minutes early. I chose a table in the most discreet corner. My heart was a runaway drum. What if she laughed in my face? What if she ran and told Darian everything? Sasha had told me to bring the evidence in print, to let the documents speak for me. Gina arrived promptly. She was even more beautiful in person, with a confidence that filled the space. She wore an impeccable dress and sunglasses that she only removed after sitting down. She looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Okay," she said, crossing her legs. "Here I am. I assume this is about Darian and me. If you've come to make a scene—" "I'm not here for that," I interrupted, my voice firmer than I felt. I offered no greetings or smiles. I took a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. "I'm here for this." She frowned and opened the folder. The first thing she saw was the copy of the authorization for my surgery with the forged signature and Darian's note. Her expression of arrogance wavered. "What is this?" "It's the order Darian signed to have me sterilized without my consent while I was on an operating table for appendicitis," I said. My voice was ice. "This is what he does to the woman he sleeps with every night." Then I slid the second set of documents over, the certificate of incorporation for Horizon's development and the copy of her $1.2 million transfer. "Look at the name of the sole legal agent," I continued, keeping my voice low and controlled. "And this is what he's doing to you. That company is an empty shell, Gina, and he's the only one with the key to the vault." I saw the color drain from her face. Her eyes, which had been defiant, were now fixed on the papers, scanning the clauses, seeing her own name next to the signature of the man she loved. I saw the exact moment her denial broke, replaced by a horrified understanding. Her hands began to tremble. She looked up, her eyes now filled with a vulnerability I hadn't expected. "The whole thing is a lie. The project in Miami? Everything?" "Everything," I confirmed. "You are his golden ticket to his next big deal, and once he gets it, he'll discard you, just like he discarded me." She was silent for a long time, staring at the documents. Tears began to roll down her cheeks, ruining her perfect makeup. They weren't tears of sadness, but of pure and absolute fury. "That bastard," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "He took everything from me. My parents' house. And he took my ability to have children," I said. And for the first time, our gazes met, not as rivals, but as two women united by the betrayal of the same man. She wiped her tears with a rough gesture. Her expression hardened. The naive designer had disappeared, replaced by a woman with a broken heart and a thirst for revenge. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. Her voice was now steel. The plan was in motion. The stage for Darian's downfall couldn't have been more perfect. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel on Fifth Avenue, packed to the brim with the who's who of New York's real estate and financial world. Darian was in his element, moving among the guests with the grace of a shark, his $1 million smile dazzling everyone. It was the night of his consecration, the launch of Horizon's Miami, his most ambitious project. And I was there in a discreet background, watching everything. Gina was also there, by his side, playing the part of the proud mistress to perfection. No one suspected the storm that was about to break. The climax of the night was the signing of the co-investment agreement with a major international consortium. Darian needed to demonstrate the liquidity of Horizon's development, Gina's money, to close the deal right then and there. He went up to the stage under a shower of applause. He stood at the podium, bathed in the light of the spotlights. "Trust," his voice resonated through the room. "In this business, trust is everything. And today, I am honored to have the trust of our distinguished partners." As he spoke, I sent a text message to Sasha, who was with a notary and a legal team in a hotel suite. "Now," Darian continued his speech, "and to demonstrate our absolute commitment, we will make the initial transfer of funds right here and now, as an act of total transparency." He gave a signal to his assistant. The huge LED screen behind him, which showed the impressive Horizon's Miami logo, prepared to display the transaction confirmation. The room held its breath, but the screen flickered, and instead of a bank confirmation, what appeared was a screenshot of the Horizon's Development Bank statement. The $1.2 million balance was there, but on top of it, in giant red letters, a digital stamp that flashed relentlessly. "Account frozen, pending fraud investigation." A murmur of confusion spread through the hall. Darian turned, his smile frozen in a grimace of horror. His face went from a perfect tan to ashen white in a second. And at that precise moment, the main doors of the ballroom swung wide open. Gina and I entered, flanked by Sasha. We walked down the central aisle in complete silence as hundreds of eyes turned to look at us. The murmur became a sepulchral silence. We reached the foot of the stage. Darian looked down at us, trapped and exposed. 2 men in suits, court officers, followed us. They approached Darian, who was still paralyzed at the podium. "Darian Jones," one of them said, his voice professional and cold. "You are hereby served with a civil lawsuit for assault and battery." "Darian Jones," the second one said, "you are hereby served with a criminal complaint for the crime of fraud." The flashes from the social media cameras that had come to cover a triumph now exploded to capture a public execution. I saw the panic in his eyes, the realization that his entire world, built on lies and arrogance, was shattering at his feet, live and in person. His empire had crumbled, and the architects of his demolition were the 2 women he had tried to destroy. The scandal was seismic. The next day, Darian's face wasn't in the socialite section. It was on the front page of financial newspapers and on judicial news websites. The story had all the elements of a modern tragedy: betrayal, greed, a corrupt doctor, and the unexpected alliance between a wife and a mistress. The fall was swift and brutal. His partners from the international consortium immediately withdrew, issuing a statement distancing themselves from any fraudulent activity. His own firm fired him and announced an internal audit. His high society friends stopped answering his calls. The Jones family retreated into a shameful silence. He was arrested a week later. With the evidence of the bribe to Dr. Sterling and Gina's fraud complaint, backed by a mountain of documentary evidence, the case against him was rock solid. Dr. Sterling lost his medical license for life and also faced criminal charges. His reputation as a medical luminary shattered forever. Darian, faced with a long prison sentence, tried to negotiate. His lawyer contacted Sasha, offering me a generous divorce settlement in exchange for dropping the charges. My answer was simple: no. There was no amount of money in the world that could buy my silence or give me back what he had taken. Gina also held firm. She recovered every last penny of her money. A month later, as the media dust began to settle, she did something I never expected. She publicly announced a donation of $250,000 to an organization supporting women who are victims of violence, stating that her donation was in honor of Amara's strength and bravery. It was her way of closing the chapter, a gesture of solidarity born of a shared betrayal. Darian's empire had not just crumbled, it had turned to ash, and from those ashes, something new, something unexpected, was beginning to grow. A year later, the sound of hammers and saws has been replaced by the murmur of conversations and the tapping of keyboards. I'm at the headquarters of the Your Decision Foundation in the heart of downtown Chicago. The space I designed myself is bright and open, with glass walls that symbolize the transparency Darian so despised. The money from the civil lawsuit, a considerable sum, became the seed for this place. Here, a team of lawyers, psychologists, and social workers offers free help to women who have been victims of reproductive coercion, financial abuse, or manipulation in their relationships. Every woman who walks through that door reminds me why I fought. I no longer live in the Santa Fe penthouse. I sold everything that tied me to that life and moved to a smaller apartment, one that feels like mine, filled with my books, my music, and my peace. Darian was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I wonder if he ever truly understands the nature of his crime. Not the fraud, but the violation of trust, the annihilation of a soul. But I quickly dismissed the thought. His fate no longer concerns me. I have rebuilt my life, not on the ruins of the old one, but on new, more solid ground. The pain of what I lost will never completely disappear. It's a scar on my soul, a perpetual reminder, but it no longer defines who I am. My work, the women we help, that's what defines me now. My laptop chimes. It's a new email. The subject line reads, "I need help." It's from a young woman who tells a painfully familiar story about a husband who controls her finances and refuses to let her work. I look out the window at the bustle of downtown Chicago, a city of monsters and anonymous heroes, a city that almost destroyed me, but instead gave me a purpose. I smile, a genuine and serene smile. I take a sip of my coffee and begin to write a response. Hello, you're in the right place. Tell me your story. We are here to listen. They say revenge doesn't bring peace, but allying with my rival to expose the man who betrayed us both gave me the deepest sense of justice. I'm wrong to believe that sometimes the best way to heal is to ensure that the one who hurt you can never hurt anyone else again.